Had it not been for an army of pie-eyed optimists reinventing the power of the grassroots, a relatively unknown senator named Barack Obama may never have won the Democratic presidential nomination and then 2 terms in the White House. One of those youthful enthusiasts back in 2008 was Sara El-Amine. Today, she is Executive Director of Organizing for Action, President Obama's grassroots community organizing project. Joining us now from Ottawa, where she led a headline session at the Broadbent Institute's 2016 Progress Summit, we welcome Sara El-Amine to TVO. Sara, it's great to meet you. How are you doing today?
Steve, I'm fantastic. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the basics. Organizing for Action is what?
We are a nonprofit, and we focus on domestic issue advocacy. We elevate grassroots voices on the issues that matter to them, and we came out of the 2012 Obama campaign, but at this point, a majority of our activists are new to the progressive movement, and we help them connect to their elected officials and really localize activism.
How do you do that work? Give us an example of how it works.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've been following the Supreme Court vacancy fight in the United States right now.
Indeed.
A bit. It's a thing, and so we have activists across the country who, when they heard of Justice Scalia's passing and the comments that Senator McConnell immediately issued, saying that, in effect, his party would refuse to do their jobs, and the Senate Judiciary Committee wouldn't allow an up or down vote. Grassroots activists across the country wanted to do more than sit on their couches and yell at their TVs, shaking their fists. And so OFA helped lead the charge with progressive allies in giving people in their own communities real impactful ways to raise their voices on calling for the Senate to do their job and at least hold hearings for whoever the president would nominate as Supreme Court justice nominee. And so we do this through quite a lot of training, a lot of on-the-ground visits to member of Congress offices, press conferences in front of local schools and government buildings, and we organize on a slew of different issues, sometimes rapid response, like the Supreme Court vacancy, but oftentimes ongoing campaigns, like changing the conversation on climate change or fighting for gun violence prevention at a national level and then at a local level when we were unable to pass national legislation.
Let me just do a quick follow-up on the... I'll just do a quick follow-up on the Supreme Court issue there, because
yes,
you certainly laid out in good detail about what the playbook is on trying to get the Senate Majority Leader to change his ways and advise and consent on President Obama's nomination for the court. But it hasn't moved the yardsticks 1 inch at all. How frustrating is that?
I disagree. You see senators like my home state senator in Illinois, Senator Kirk, coming out and calling for a fair and just hearing.
He's the one. He's the only one, as far as I know.
Well, Senator Grassley in Iowa has faced tremendous grassroots pressure in the past 2 weeks. And it's not grassroots pressure necessarily just from progressives and people that OFA and allied organizations have organized. He didn't release the locations of his town halls that he was having over Easter recess, and Republicans showed up calling for him to follow the Constitution and hold a fair and just hearing. And so we are changing the conversation, and we've seen through polling and focus groups and talking to everyday people that independent voters and people who consider themselves nonpartisan view this to be a real an unjust blockading of our Constitution.
Okay, let's get a better understanding of how what you do is different from, let's just say, good old-fashioned canvassing, phone banking, all of that kind of thing. What's the difference?
Yes. Well, traditional electoral and issue campaigns since before 8 years ago, in a lot of different instances, relied, as you said, on many paid staff to execute their efforts. And in the organizing world, we talk about activism and mobilizing versus real community organizing. And the idea is that if you rely just on paid staffers to distribute a very specific given message, because they are paid staffers, yes, they may care deeply about that issue, but they won't authentically understand the issue and be able to build critical mass in the same way that local constituents would be. And so the Obama grassroots model has and continues to rely on empowering everyday people and giving volunteers access to data and skills and, frankly, roles that historically progressives haven't allowed volunteers to have access to. And we're quite proud of it, and we believe that it makes us a more authentic movement day to day and then big picture.
You may have anticipated my next question with that answer, but let me try it anyway, just in case there is a subtle nuance that I'm missing here. You're in Ottawa, you're doing workshops at the Broadband Institute conference, and I'm wondering what you think the single most important, as they say in the business, takeaway is from the session you're leading.
Well, I have to say, I'm thrilled to be up here. We may have the cutting edge tactics in community organizing and grassroots advocacy, but it's only because we've had such hard-won battles on the progressive side that's really required us to dig deep and be innovative and invest in community organizing instead of paid media as a silver bullet. And so my big message at the Broadbent Progress Institute, as I did a 3-hour-long training with activists from across the country here, was very humbly that letting go of control and training activists to be their own advocates is the true key to democratic empowerment, not just during election cycles, because I think we're inching towards that all over the world, but frankly, even more importantly, in between. Once we elect elected officials to office, it's incumbent upon us as citizens to hold them accountable to the policies that they promised us when they ran on election day. And we have far too few institutions empowering everyday constituents to do that. So I said, let go of control and train those grassroots advocates.
I'm wondering if it goes both ways. They've obviously brought you to our nation's capital in order to pick your brains and learn from your experiences south of the border. Do you go home having learned anything from anybody up here?
Absolutely, yes. We actually had a fantastic conversation last night over beer, as most good conversations are. And I was speaking to quite a few local organizers about the policy successes that the Canadian progressive movement has been able to inch forward, even without having any type of majority legislatively. And so to me, I've made this joke before, but in the United States, the progressive movement literally and figuratively looks up to Canada. And there are quite a few progressive victories and policy initiatives that we have mimicked and that we will continue to mimic as you all are able to test the waters in different ways that we aren't. Because of just where the American people are at.
They do say, well, I guess it was Tip O'Neill who once said, the former Speaker of your Congress, that all politics is local. And if that is true, yes, do you feel that the tactics and or approaches that you are preaching about are easily translated into different countries, different political situations, different political institutions? What do you think?
I love that question. So I think two important things. One is that the beautiful thing about community organizing is that it centers on relationship building, and it centers on allowing people to tap into the parts of themselves that are affected by political issues and share their personal stories in an authentic way with neighbors about how politics affects their lives. And so there's something deeply transferable about giving citizens the very transferable tools of telling their own political stories and advocating for themselves, and certainly phone banking and canvassing and holding house meetings and holding one-on-one meetings and telling personal stories, all the bedrocks of this neighborhood team organizing model that we in the United States have really pioneered. Those are important to any movement anywhere across the world. At the same time, there are real political barriers that change from legislative system to legislative system. And so I'd actually lean into your question even more and say that at the local level, the similarities are even more present than at the national level. And the work that we do in the United States at the city council level to pass ordinances around background checks and on gun violence prevention, that really takes neighbor-to-neighbor community organizing, and much more so than the national type of legislative work we might do that relies much more on matching a message with a set of larger allied organization strategies and community organizing. So yes, all politics are local, and community organizing is the best way to really authenticate and move forward those local goals.
Give us a sense as well, Sara, about how common it is for American presidents to have organizations such as yours to help them advance their agendas. How common is it?
Absolutely uncommon. We are a great experiment, and I will take my OFA executive director hat off for a second and just say I have been involved with the President's Grassroots movement for almost 9 straight years now. And in 2007, I was a 22-year-old, starry-eyed, disenchanted international activist. And someone at the time lent me the book, The Audacity of Hope, when I was going down the long, dark path towards law school, as many disenchanted activists do, in the summer of 2007. And I quit my job, I borrowed my best friend's car, I drove out to the old ice skating rink that was the Iowa headquarters at the time, and showed up and said, I don't really have any skills, but I speak a few languages, and I am really passionate about changing conversations in American politics, and I've lived through 8 Bush years. And so this is an unprecedented president, and this movement that he started with his candidacy in 2007, it's created so many different types of structures and entities and opportunities and challenges that we've really been able to take advantage of. And so there's no other sitting president who's had an active 501c4 nonprofit. And I also want to clearly say that while we are a continuation of the president's grassroots movement, we're a grassroots movement. We don't follow the orders of the president. And certainly there have been times where the grassroots movement has disagreed with where the president is going on a given policy or another. And we've had to make the sometimes tough decision to follow the populist voices and be true to our communities and our chapter leaders, our 250 chapter leaders in cities across the country. So it's a great experiment that I recommend to any grassroots movement. Building power in between elections has helped all of our policy wins be long-lasting, and I keep using the word authentic, but it's true. And I hope that whoever the next president is will pilot this again and learn from our mistakes.
Well, since you brought it up, and since you were talking about the grassroots there and populist voices in the United States, I can't have you in that chair and not ask you about the, well, I don't know what you want to call it, but let's just call it unprecedented explosion of grassroots and populist voices in your country right now, both parties featuring it as well. I mean, Bernie Sanders for the Democrats and, of course, Donald Trump for the Republicans. What do you make of what is going on in your country right now?
Well, I will say the president, after 8 years, we have less than a 5% unemployment rate. We've had something like 71 straight months of job growth. When we were unable to pass sweeping legislation through Congress on climate change, the president used his executive authority to achieve absolutely historic wins that are changing the lives of millions of Americans and is changing our economy. We passed Obamacare, and we've now, after a few shaky years, had tens of millions of Americans who have access to health care that they didn't have before. So
all of what you said is true.
You won't be surprised.
All of what you've said is true.
Yes.
And yet,
we
turn on our televisions every night and we see an explosion of populist anger all over your country. And we need
Yes.
to understand that better. How is that?
Yes.
Why is that happening if the last 7 years have been so productive?
And yet, student loans are also still crippling our economy. And millennials in particular, when faced with basically having two mortgages, their student loan and then trying to buy a house, are in a completely different position than baby boomers were at this time in their careers and lives. And there still are a tremendous amount of problems that we have to address, that we've failed to address, not for lack of trying, like immigration reform. So it's not surprising that Americans are looking towards two drastically new ways of achieving this progress. Because the last 8 years, I think a lot of us are realizing, have been quite successful. And when you look at the history of American presidential elections, there have been very few times in the past 100 years where one party has two terms or two presidents in a row kept leadership. So there should be this vigorous debate. I think what's frustrating to those of us, I want to be clear, OFA does not work on any of the elections. We are purely an issue advocacy organization. What's been frustrating to issue advocates like our 250 chapters across the country and our millions of grassroots supporters that follow us on Twitter and Facebook and on our email list is that the conversation has strayed away from the issues that matter to Americans. And so that's the explosion. That part has felt like an explosion to me as well. But I think we're reining it back in. And certainly, there's no playbook for this election, as you're seeing clearly.
No, that is for sure. This is all unprecedented right now, as I suggested a few moments ago. But I wonder whether, when you see the scenes, for example, tens of thousands of people gathering to watch Donald Trump give a speech in Alabama, as happened a few weeks ago, and repeated in locales all over the United States, and the violence that takes place at those rallies, does it give you pause about what unbridled grassroots anger could lead to?
So I started my organizing, I think I mentioned this, doing international work. And I did an internship at the United Nations when I was 21 years old. And while I was at the United Nations, a conflict that I had been working on burst again, and war broke out between two countries I'd been working to, in a very minor grassroots way, broker peace between. And I ended up losing an 11-year-old cousin who was in his backyard riding his bike in southern Lebanon, and he was killed in an airstrike. And I completely lost hope, as one does. And I was literally in the halls of power working at the United Nations International Headquarters in New York City. And it made me quite angry, and it made me feel powerless. And it took me quite a long time of feeling powerless and not speaking up and working through that anger to get to a place where I realized that the only antidote to fear and to anger and to rage is real conversation with people on the other side of the aisle. And I think that's what's been so incredible about President Obama, is that he's willing to be a leader in bipartisanship. And certainly he hasn't been successful at every step of the way on that, but he has tried. And so when we saw the Tea Party in 2010, at that point in time, I was leading Arizona in the fight for healthcare reform. We had 3 blue dog Democrats who were getting protested by Tea Partiers in quite ugly ways. As you might remember, Congresswoman Giffords was shot during that time of rage and anger and negative discourse. But what we saw after that was a reaction in the other direction. And so I think, listen, this is democracy. Democracy is messy. It's the worst form of government except for all the others. And I have faith in the American people, and I have been organizing on the ground for long enough and seen the underbelly and also the hopeful, uplifting side that people will find a way to have meaningful conversations. And this will be great. This period of time will be important for the now fractured Republican Party to really figure out what they stand for and why, and give voice to new leaders through this.
The expression you just used, "I have faith in the American people," is something I've heard your president say several times over the last few weeks, which is basically code for they won't be so stupid as to elect Donald Trump president, right?
If they elect Donald Trump president, it will have been a democratic election. And so long as people are civically engaged and voting, like we are a democracy. And so
no, I get that, but that's the code, right? I mean, that is code. When you say, I have great faith in the American people, I think what you're saying and what the president are both saying is that you're going to vote for Hillary. Am I getting that right?
I can't make any predictions. No, I can't make any predictions. And I also, I won't take a stance. The primaries are still in full swing, and voters really have to make their own decisions. This is the beauty and the challenge of democracy. And there was an interesting piece on one of the news outlets a month ago or so that proposed a dystopian future whereby Donald Trump could be elected in 2020 and would take such advantage of executive power that Congress, the Senate and the House would find a way to unite against him, and bipartisanship would to have new life breathed into it. And so, I have faith in organizers, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to raise our voices in between elections, so that when these elections happen, it's not so surprising, and we don't feel so taken aback by where average Americans stand. And I'll just say one last thing, which is that progressives have invested in community organizing during every issue fight, at every midterm election in the past 8 years, and frankly before. We don't have the type of money that conservatives have to invest in paid media, which has been seen as a silver bullet, and is certainly more efficient and easier than investing in hard community organizing. And I think as a result, we've had more conversations within the progressive movement that have allowed us to find shared values and shared ground on all of the different issues. And I don't think you're seeing that on the conservative side. I think that on the issues, people are quite polarized and haven't been having conversation amongst wings of the Republican Party like progressives have. And it's a shame.
We will continue from north of the border to watch it all with utter fascination. And Sara, we thank you very much for sparing some time for us on TVO tonight and joining us from our nation's capital. Thanks so much, and a delight to meet you on television.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.